Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Orlah. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Chet. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Tzvitlana Aranbayev Neliyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov Minuchatam Began Eden Amen. The previous Mishnah listed 6 items that do not become nullified according to the Chachamim, and a 7th one according to Rabbi Akiva. That Mishnah spoke about whole items. The law is different if these items were no longer whole, like the Mishnah will now explain. Kitzad, how so? Meaning, under what conditions do these items not become nullified? When they are whole, the Mefarshim explain. Nitpatzi'u ha'egozim, but if the walnuts were cracked open. Nitpardu harimonim, if the pomegranates were split. Nitpatchu hechaviyot, the barrels of wine were open. Nitchatchu hadilu'im, the gourds were cut. Nitparsu hakikarot, or the loaves were broken. Ya'alu be'echad u'matayim, they can become nullified in a mixture of 201 parts, meaning 200 permitted parts to 1 part Orlah or Kila Kerem. Now, the items listed in the previous Mishnah are considered to be too important to become nullified only when they are whole. Once they have been broken, they lose their special significance and they can become nullified the same as any other Orlah Kila Kerem. And the Mefarshim explained the Mishnah is discussing cases where these special items fell into the mixture after they had already been broken. The law in a case where they fell in whole and then broke apart in a mixture is a machloket by Tanaim and a Braita. And the Mefarshim quote Mesechet Gitin, page 54b. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Chet. Mishnah Tet now is the final Mishnah of Mishnah Masechet Orlah. It discusses the law of possible Orlah and Kila Kerem, meaning fruits that may be Orlah or Kila Kerem, but we don't know for sure. Now, generally, when there is a question whether something is Asul prohibited, we must be strict about it if we're dealing with Isurei Doraita, biblical prohibition, and we can be more lenient about it if we're dealing with the Isur Drabanan, a rabbinic prohibition. Now, in regards to Orlah and Kila Kerem, the Mishnah is going to teach that there is a difference between Eretz Yisrael and outside of Eretz Yisrael. Sefek Orlah, possible Orlah, meaning fruit that may have come from an Orlah tree, but we don't know for sure. So, for example, the Mefarshim explain, a non-Jew brought fruit from his orchard. His orchard contained both Orlah and non-Orlah trees, and we don't know whether the fruit he brought was from an Orlah tree or a non-Orlah tree. The halacha is it's going to be subject to the following halacha. Be'eretz Yisrael asur. If the fruit grew in Eretz Yisrael, it is forbidden. Why? Since the Orlah prohibition is a Isur Doraita, it's a biblical prohibition. When there is a doubt about it, we must act stringently and prohibit it, like we know, Savek Doraita Lechumba. Ubisuria mutar. But if the fruit grew in Syria, which is only rabbinically considered part of Eretz Yisrael, it is permitted to buy fruit that may possibly be Orlah, as long as we do not buy it from a field that is known to contain some Orlah trees. And Mefarshim explain, the biblical prohibition of Orlah actually applies even outside of Eretz Yisrael, like the Mishnah will say, but only in cases where it's definitely Orlah. Possible Orlah, when something is possibly Orlah, it's biblically permitted outside of Eretz Yisrael. Now, Syria is Aram Tzova, they called, right? The area roughly corresponding, the Mefarshim explained, to present-day northern Syria. It was conquered by David HaMelech. It was not part of the land of Israel under biblical law, but the rabbis decreed that it should be treated in many ways with the laws of Eretz Yisrael. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, the law is even more lenient. A Jew may go down to a field that has both Orlah and non-Orlah trees and buy fruit that was already picked by a non-Jew. As long as it does not actually see the non-Jew gathering the fruit from the trees. Because now, since it's not clear that the fruit came from the Orlah trees, he may buy it and eat it. However, the Mefarshim point out, the reason in Syria, the rabbis do not permit this in Syria. They only permitted buying from the non-Jew if he found them with his fruits outside the field, where it's possible that the fruit was not even from this field. Because since Syria was treated by the rabbis as part of Eretz Yisrael, the rabbis were stricter there about buying possible Orlah, and they require a greater degree of uncertainty before permitting us to buy it. Whereas we see here in Chutz La'aretz, you can go down to the field and buy the fruit as long as you don't actually see him gathering it from the trees. However, if he sees and pick the fruit, he may not buy it. This is a rabbinic stringency. Now, because the Mefarshim explain where we see him picking the fruit from this field. The only question that remains is whether the tree picked from was an Orlah tree or a non-Orlah tree. The rabbis did not permit buying such fruit since it might lead people to buy fruit from a non-Jew even when it was clearly from an Orlah tree. They only permitted buying fruit in that field when it had already been picked before the Jew came, so there's still a slight chance that the fruit is not from this field at all. The Mishnah now discusses a similar law with regards to the prohibition of kilei kerem, climb of the vineyard. Kerem natua yarak. If there is a vineyard that was planted with vegetables, which causes those vegetables to become prohibited as kilei kerem, which may not be eaten, and you cannot benefit from them, like we learned in Mishna Yomi, chapter 8, Mishnah 1. V'yarak nimkar chutza lo, and vegetables are being sold outside the vineyard, and we do not know if they came from this vineyard or from somewhere else. The halakha is like this. Be'eretz Yisrael asur. In Eretz Yisrael, the vegetables are forbidden, because since the prohibition of kilei kerem in Eretz Yisrael is a biblical one, it's d'oraita. When there is a doubt about it, we must act strictly and prohibit it. U'b'Suria mutar. But if the possible kilei kerem vegetables grew in Syria, they are permitted, because the prohibition of kilei kerem in Syria is only d'Rabbanan, rabbinic. And when there exists a doubt involving a isur d'Rabbanan, we may act leniently. And again, the Mefarshim explain kilei kerem is biblically prohibited only in Eretz Yisrael. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's only rabbinically prohibited, like the Mishnah is going to say. Therefore, we apply the general rule for all d'Rabbanan, Isurei d'Rabbanan. When there is a doubt, we say Safek d'Rabbanan nekula. We are lenient. Right? So, Ubesuria mutar. Right? We said in Syria they are permitted. Ubechutz l'aaretz yored veloket. And outside of Eretz Yisrael, the law is even more lenient. A Jew may ask a non-Jew, go down and gather vegetables on my behalf, even though they may be kilei kerem. Ubelvad shelo yikot biyad, provided that the Jew does not pick it with his own hand. The Mefarshim explain, the Mishnah is discussing a case where there are vegetables in or near this vineyard that are not prohibited as kilei kerem. Therefore, since it's possible the non-Jew will give him permitted vegetables, he's allowed to ask him to go and gather vegetables for him. However, the Jew may not pick the vegetables himself, since he can see which vegetables are prohibited. Similarly, if he sees the non-Jew pick vegetables that are definitely kilei kerem, he may not take them. Now, in the case of Orlah, outside of Eretz Yisrael, if you remember, we said we cannot ask a non-Jew to gather for us from a field that contains Orlah. We can only buy what was already picked. And the reason is, the Mefarshim explained, kilei kerem outside of Eretz Yisrael is treated more leniently in this respect, because even definite kilei kerem is not biblically asur outside of Eretz Yisrael, which will, unlike definite Orah, which is asur if it's definite outside of Eretz Yisrael. The Mishnah now defines the law for a number of produce-related prohibitions outside of Eretz Yisrael. Hechadash asur min haTorah b'chol makom. Chadash is prohibited by the Torah everywhere, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. The word Chadash means new. The Torah states that the new crop of grain, which is wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and oats, they may not be eaten until the Omer offering has been brought on the 16th day of Nisan. Sefer Vayikra, chapter 23, pasuk 14. Nowadays, when we do not have a Bet HaMikdash in which to bring the Korban HaOmer, the Omer offering, the new crop becomes permitted at the end of the day on the 16th of Nisan. The Tana of our Mishnah holds that the Isur, the prohibition of Chadash, applies on the biblical level, even outside the land of Israel. He learns this from the end of the pasuk about Chadash, which states the halacha applies b'chol mashvotechem, in all of your dwellings. Other Tanaim disagree. We'll see that b'zad Hashem in Mishnah Mesachik Gidushin, chapter 1, Mishnah 9. But our Mishnah says Chadash asur min haTorah b'chol makom. Chadash is prohibited by the Torah everywhere, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. Va'orlah halacha. Orlah is prohibited outside of Eretz Yisrael by halacha leMoshe miSinai, which has the status of a Torah law. Now, just as a background, a halacha leMoshe miSinai is a law given to Moshe at Mount Sinai, which was not written in the Torah itself. The halacha leMoshe miSinai about Orlah included a provision that in cases where there is a doubt whether something is Orlah, the matter should be treated leniently, even though it has a status of Isur Doraita, biblical Isur. This is the reason why the Mishnah said above that possible Orlah is treated leniently outside of Eretz Yisrael. Va'kilaim midivrei sofrim, but kilaim of the vineyard is prohibited outside of Eretz Yisrael only by rabbinic enactment, which literally means, divrei sofrim literally means by words of the scribes. Now, the Mefarshim explain biblically the prohibition of kilei kerem, climb of the vineyard, like other mitzvot, dependent on the land, they apply only in Eretz Yisrael, like we'll see in the Mishnah Masechet Kiddushin, chapter 1, Mishnah 8. Nevertheless, it applies midrabanan on a rabbinic level, even outside of Eretz Yisrael. Now, this rabbinic prohibition applies only to kilayim of the vineyard. Since such kilayim is prohibited in Eretz Yisrael, even for benefit, the rabbis prohibited it outside of Eretz Yisrael as well. However, they did not prohibit kilayim of seeds, which is planting different kinds of vegetables and grains together outside of Eretz Yisrael, because this kind of kilayim is not prohibited for benefit or even to eat in Eretz Yisrael. Now, the Rav adds, grafting different species of trees together is biblically prohibited even outside of Eretz Yisrael. And that is Renabotai of Perek Gimel Mishnah Tet, and that is also the end of Mishnah Masechet Orlah. Chazak u'baruch. Everybody should have a Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen v'amen.